Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. Tonight, we have our friend Nick Brana returning from the draft Bernie for a People's Party. As you all have known, we've had Nick on several times now, and it is my pleasure, as always, to talk to him about his efforts. But before we get into that, I just want to thank everybody for sticking with Real Progressives. We've been working really hard to try and bring you the people in the movement that you want to hear from. We're also trying very, very hard to ensure that we keep our credibility by maintaining a truth-based formula. So without further ado, let me bring forward my friend and your friend, Nick Brana. Welcome to the show, Nick. How are you, sir?
Steve, I am wonderful, and it's great to see you again. I love talking to you.
You as well. You as well. So, Nick, I want to start off. Let me get some of the negative out of the way for a minute so we can get to some of the good.
Go for it.
Obviously, Tim Canova is a friend of the progressive movement. I've been friends with Tim for a while now, and Tim is running against the arch nemesis of the progressive movement, and Debbie, what's-her-name, Schultz. Debbie, who has got blood all over her hands from the rigged election. The list is so long it's not funny. And when Bernie was confronted with the idea of supporting Tim Canova's candidacy, he came out and he basically said, "Tim Canova? What do you mean, Tim?" And I don't know how to take that. I didn't know how to take that. I know it hurt Tim Canova. But sometimes politics is just politics. What is your take on that? Because that's got to have been coming back to you. You've had to have been hearing about that.
Yes, I have. And this plays into a broader theme of things, I think most people will be aware watching, but a quick 101 is that we at Draft Bernie for a People's Party are trying to get Bernie to launch a new party. We think it is past time. We think he effectively built the party in the primary. And so we're saying, Bernie, you built a fundraising base, you built a donor base, you popularized the coalition, you popularized the message. That's basically a party. You created a party. Sign the paperwork, Bernie, and let's get on with the revolution. Let's start a party for the progressive majority. So with that out of the way, I'm going to answer your question, Steve. Bernie and Tim, unfortunately, have not gotten along ever since Bernie was going to go stump for him in California, and then in Florida, and then decided not to at the end for his 2016 primary. And so it is unfortunate, that he reacted that way, that Bernie Sanders reacted that way. It is such a clear contrast, between Tim Canova and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I mean, the epitome of the establishment. There is probably there are a few people, if anyone, who are more responsible for the way that the primary was rigged, than Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So it's really at the helm of that. And so the contrast is so clear. And the good news is, of course, that I do think that Bernie will endorse him in the end. And I do think that our revolution will also endorse him, especially the way that our revolution is set up, kind of chapters, which are semi-autonomous. And so I think that ultimately Bernie and our revolution will end up on the right side of this, with Tim. So but that gets to a broader question, of course, of why are we drafting Bernie if we disagree with him on that decision or that policy? And it's like, well, we're not drafting Bernie because we agree with him on everything. We're drafting Bernie to start a new party because he is the one who can do it. Because he is the most popular politician in the country. He's the one with an 80% favorability rating inside the Democratic Party. He's the one that has the party base on his side. He's the one with a 70% favorability rating with independents. He's the one who can combine these coalitions, bring together the coalition from the campaign, and really create a new party successfully. And at that point, if we did that, there would be a founding convention, the movement would come together, and we would design the platform as a movement, which would be a cathartic experience, really, of bringing together all the diverse aspects, the diverse elements of the movement, to come together and design the portion of the platform that is kind of applicable to them, and then to weave that together into really a really powerful progressive platform. You know, it wouldn't just be Bernie Sanders determining that; it would be all of us, as it should be.
Very good. Okay, so, obviously there was a lot of controversy about the People's Summit. The People's Summit, some people are calling it the Some People's Summit. Some people are saying that, only, Democrats were really there. Obviously, that's not entirely true. Where's the truth lie? I saw you guys really have a wonderful presence there. You guys were energized. You guys took to the floor. You brought signs in. You had Roseanne tomorrow, say, I'm with you. I've heard Nina talk to me about your experience, and also counter that with the experience of the larger progressive movement that you're trying to bring together that maybe didn't feel part of that.
Well, this was an amazing sign of how ready the progressive movement is for a new party. It's the fact that we came into the conference, we did not have a speaking role, we did not have a booth, we really didn't have any kind of official presence, and yet we ended up with having, thanks to the Justice Party, who shared their booth with us and with PIP. We ended up having that, and we ended up actually taking over the adjacent booths because there was nobody there. So in the end, we ended up with 3 booths, and not just that, but we got more than 1,000 signatures, people lining up to sign the petition for Bernie to start a new party. It was amazing. It was an incredible experience. I could not move, Steve, more than 10 feet without somebody coming up and saying, "Oh my God, I'm so ready for this. I'm so excited for it to happen. Like, let's get Bernie on board." It was remarkable. And to think that the event itself didn't necessarily cater to that, on an official capacity. I had a few people tell me that we were the most popular group without a speaking role, who did not have a speaking role. And so it was an incredible experience. We started off on Friday. About I would say about 100 of us or so gathered on Friday morning. We had Jimmy Dore there, Jimmy leading the chant, "Draft Bernie, draft Bernie," and then really capped it off with Saturday, which when we went into Bernie's speech at the Artie Theater at the convention center, and we cheered for him to start a new party. And got his attention, and he smiled. Actually, he smiled in response to us. And then at the end, of course, that incredible moment where Roseanne tomorrow took the stage, on stage with Bernie and Jane, and she said, "I want to thank all the Draft Bernie people in the audience. I'm with you." And it was such an incredibly electric moment, and the crowd went wild there. And I think it was really great for Bernie to have seen that, to have seen the support, And it's always difficult to judge from that the level of support that you have, when you're in a crowded auditorium like that or an event like that. But actually, we saw that their independent voter conducted a survey of hundreds of participants who were there at the People's Summit, and one of the questions was, how many of you would like to see Bernie start his own party and form, basically a new coalition among independents, progressive Democrats, even some anti-establishment Republicans? And 74% of the people there said yes. Said we want Bernie to start that party, and that's consistent with some of the Twitter polls that we've done. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to run kind of an official poll, and running a poll of the movement would be very hard too. And so there are Twitter polls of thousands of people we've run. It's the same question, and again, about 70% or more of people say, yeah, so let's get this party started. So it was really exciting.
Well, let me ask you, because one of the concerns that people have that are on the fence about joining a third party of any variety, be it even the Greens, who have been around for a little while, Draft Bernie, PIP, or any of the others, a lot of them are sitting there on the fence wondering what it'll take for you to get past ideating and get to actually organizing and building out that? Is your goal here, with or without Bernie, to have some sort of a national coming out party? Talk to me a little bit about the steps ahead as to how you plan to lay the groundwork to build this party, Nick.
A lot of people are wondering that. And so there's two different tracks. If Bernie decides to do it, that's a whole, we're in a whole new world. And I think that he will decide to do it. And if he decides to do it by late summer, early fall, then we could have, by next year, a nationally viable progressive party competing across the country. And that's remarkable. And there really is, I think, no other way to do that in terms of the midterms. Of course, still, even if Bernie, regardless of what Bernie decides, the majority of the country wants a new party, and the majority of the country is progressive down the line on the issues. And so we're going to need that kind of party nevertheless. That's what we see with declining party affiliation, is that people are leaving the Democratic Party. They're going independent. And so really that, what the progressive movement is kind of here, Steve, wringing its hands, like, ooh, what should we do? Should we start a new party? Should we continue reforming the Democrats? And meanwhile, the American people have made up their mind, and they're doing that, and they're showing us by leaving the Democratic Party and by becoming independents instead. And so, what we're suggesting is that instead, let's follow the lead of the American people, and let's start that new party that the majority are asking for. And so we're working on kind of what more of a timeline would look like. It would look differently if Bernie was not to join. And of course, Bernie joining exists on a spectrum. And so Bernie could decide to join, he could decide to join in this stage, where we're kind of building this coalition. He could decide to join, later on in a stage once we've actually kind of begun the party formation, that kind of thing. But I think when it becomes clear to Bernie, as we certainly made headway in making clear to him at the People's Summit, that the progressive movement really is on the side of this, then Bernie will know. He'll say, oh, well, gee, reforming the Democratic Party was going poorly while the movement was basically pouring its heart and soul into that. And, for the movement now to be saying, Bernie, we love you, but we're no longer with you on that. We don't think it can work. At that point, I think Bernie's going to have to come to terms, with the fact that we need a new strategy, and that he should pick up and lead, right, just like he did during the primaries.
It's interesting you say that, because obviously Bernie Sanders is the most popular candidate, or not even candidate, just politician in America. But he's left behind some folks that are skeptical. And for those people, I have been very vocal in saying, guys, Draft Bernie is not about Bernie per se. Draft Bernie is about bringing in the people that are afraid to leave the Democratic Party. And for those people outside the Democratic Party already who are non-affiliated but are looking for a home, that have chosen, for whatever reason, not to be a Green Party member, have not wanted to go with the Greens, hey, you're building something for them. In fact, you're not even antagonistic to the Greens. You're looking to work with them as well, correct? I mean, so what is it that people that are skeptical because they see Bernie trying to bring people in, because he's been openly saying, I'm trying to fix the Democratic Party. I am trying to fix the Democratic Party. He says it's not sheepdogging. He's telling you, I am trying to fix the Democratic Party. I'm not following him, and neither are you, obviously. You're saying, hey, Bernie, come on out here and join your revolution, okay? But for those people who say he's sold out and all that stuff, he is outright telling you point blank, I am trying to reform the Democratic Party. He's not, to me, he's being very, very overt in his intentions. However, he has left multiple cake droppings, if you will, crumbs or whatever, that indicate he is open to hearing what you have to say. So that invigorates me. And it also invigorates me to know that you've had positive feedback from people such as Nina Turner, and you've seen Danny DeVito tweet out. You've had some powerful people give some powerful praise to you. Can you talk about some of the optimism people can look at in terms of building a people's party outside the duopoly?
Yeah, no, you're right. Roseanne DeMoro was just the latest, Bernie surrogate to really express support for starting a new party. Before that, Josh Fox, Cornel West, Nina Turner has been very enthusiastic about it. She requested an interview at the People's Summit. It was a fabulous interview. I can't wait to see that. And so, really, that's what you got to at the end there is, I think, something that the progressive movement needs to confront, and once you do that, a world of possibility opens up. And that is the fact that the Democratic Party has made its choice. There's a lot of progressives like Robert Reich, many others who are always saying, including Bernie actually, who are saying, Democratic Party, you better reform, or we're going to start a new party. Bernie has said that. Bernie said the action's going to be in a third party if the Democratic Party doesn't reform. And so, really, the question for us now is saying, okay, we have to draw the line somewhere. And we have to say, at what point do we say you have not reformed? At what point does it become past tense? And I think that time has come, and those of us at Draft Bernie, that's what we believe, is that we require no further evidence from the party to really say, all right, it's time to do something ourselves. And we are the majority. We're the majority on the issues. We're the majority in terms of the people who want, in terms of those who want to start a new party. 57% of the country wants to start a new party. Only 37% does not. So that is, once you realize that, and once you accept that, really, that world of possibility of creating something fresh opens up, and it's a freedom. It's a liberation from the constraints of the party. And so, yes, I agree. I agree on that. I think you touched on something very important, which is we need to accept that the party has made its choice. And the ball is no longer in the party's court. The ball is in our court. Now it's our choice. We have to decide how to respond to the party saying that it is not going to change, to the party going down the line. At Left Forum, I'm sure most people are familiar with this, but I'll touch on it. At Left Forum, I gave a presentation there. I was on a panel, and I said, what would you expect to see if the Democratic Party was reforming? Let's not take that as some vague concept out there in the ether. Let's attach some real metrics and some real standards to that. So what would you see? You'd see the party empowering progressive leaders. Has it done that? No. It put a pharmaceutical lobbyist in California to chair the California Democratic Party, put a billionaire developer who used to be a Republican to chair the Florida Democratic Party. It put a TTP supporting Obama Secretary of Labor as the head of the party, the Democratic Party, Tom Perez. Nancy Pelosi was reelected minority speaker, the minority leader in the House. And then Chuck Schumer, of course, Wall Street favored, elected Senate minority leader. So that's not happening. All right, what else can we look to? And in fact, the party's also looking, the party's new model to win elections is now to put the billionaires directly into power. So the party's recruiting billionaires in Florida, in Ohio, and in California to run. And it did it already, in fact. It ran Jim Justice, also a former Republican, Jim Justice in West Virginia. He's a coal baron, billionaire coal baron. Here in Virginia, the guy who won the Democratic primary against Tom Perello. He's former Republican, again, voted for Bush twice. And so, that's not happening. What else would you expect to see? All right, well, you would expect to see perhaps the party adopting a progressive platform. The party can't even come on board on the platform that was agreed to between Hillary Clinton and Bernie. That they don't even represent that. The party is taking more corporate money now than it was before. You know, back at the DNC where Tom Perez was elected, the party decided that it was going to do away with a ban that Obama had put in place against corporate lobbyist money, against corporate lobbyists serving on the DNC board. And they did away with that instead. And so now corporate money flows freely to the DNC. Lobbyist money flows freely to the DNC. And they have a Goldman Sachs lobbyist on their national committee. You know, it's embarrassing. It's a disgrace. You know, what else would you expect to see? I'll touch on one other thing. And that's that the people would be coming into the party. People would be coming into the party, you know. You've got Donald Trump constantly offending, attacking working people every day. Traditional political science tells you, wow, the opposition party should be surging the Democratic Party. You've got another factor. You've got another major force. You've got Bernie Sanders, most popular politician in the country, out there saying every day, you know, working his hardest to try to build that party. And yet, again, what do we see? What do we see in the actual party affiliation numbers? Amazingly, the party's affiliation is declining. The Democratic Party affiliation is declining, and people are becoming independents. Millions of former Democrats are becoming independents. And so really just across the board of any of these things, the minute you begin to define what does it mean to reform as a party, none of it's happening. And so that's why, I mean, it's time to get past that. It's time to accept that. It's time to accept that the ball is in our court. They made their choice. Now we got to make ours.
I couldn't agree. That was a great way of saying this. I want to ask you a big question. My opinion, it's a big question. So the progressive movement has got many, many strains, as you said early on. I mean, we're talking about 1,000 different angles that it's taking. So what Ellis Winningham, who works with me frequently, says is we've got 1 million orphaned issues that no one's willing to work together. That people are all like saying, this is my sandbox, they're looking over there, and saying, my sandbox, looking over there. And over there in the other place where you had just talked about, the Democrats are sitting there. And the list is unfathomable. I mean, pushing Ossoff, who is an absolute shill, pushing all these individuals who have no interest whatsoever in single payer, which the American people clearly want. Okay, they're pushing people in California, Rendon. I mean, the things that are going on within the Democratic Party are so atrocious. I mean, we did an expose on Cory Booker and his pharmaceutical, take. They're clowns. These people are crooks. I mean, we're not even talking about like you look at the Republicans and you say they're an easy target because the Republicans are who all of us former Democrats always looked at and said, bad, bad, bad. But the reality is that Republicans are who we thought they were. And we let them off the hook by allowing the Democrats to become Republican light and sit there and kiss us in one side of the cheek while shoving a knife up in our livers behind us. What is the answer to people like the Justice Dems and to the other folks that are revolutions of the world and stuff that are supporting Bernie directly in the party? What is the reach out to them? What is the, because obviously, with all due respect, their efforts are futile. It is evident across the board. You got people like Joy Reid out there literally saying we're like a bunch of bums laying on the couch, eating all your food, and then leaving trash everywhere and not pitching in anything for the beer fund or whatever. However she said it. They hate us. I mean, the Democratic Party absolutely hates progressives unless it's election time, and then all of a sudden they say, hey, I'm a progressive who gets things done. They are absolutely anathema. They hate everything about us. Why are they still there? Why? What do we do here? It's maddening.
It's true. We are worse than Republicans to progressives. I mean, to establishment Democrats. It's very true. And there's a lot of people who seem to be coming to this conclusion now. Though they seem to be confronting this, and it's incredible. It's like you can see the gears turning in their mind. You know, Michael Moore, for example, recently said that the Democrats have no message. no plan. They basically, there's nothing. It's the exact same thing. That's the exact same formula that caused them to lose to Donald Trump so spectacularly. And, lo and behold, Americans are reacting in the same way. You have no message, you offer no alternative, no progressive platform, then Americans are doing the exact same thing that they did in the 2016 election. And they're turning away from you. They're leaving your party, amazingly, despite all of the forces that should be bringing them in. And so, there was another article, Sean King. He talked about how he talked about how a lot more of his friends are starting to talk seriously about a third party. That wrote a very thoughtful article in which he made a profound statement, which I was talking about earlier. It's really a way to summarize what I was talking about earlier, which is that the Democratic Party is moving to the right, And so this is not. So what I would say is that this is not a matter of really kind of saying, hey, we're making progress, it's gradual, but stick with it, and there's the promise of something greater if we just adhere to this strategy. It's not one of those things. It's not a case like that. Rather, this is a case in which you're actually seeing a regression, And so then the question, and that's what's prompting so many people really to come to this, to say, oh my God, like this is backfiring in such a remarkable way. Paul Jay, I saw him say recently that maybe the Democrats are just so wedded to corporate interests, to Wall Street, to the military-industrial complex, that they cannot, that they would prefer to have a Republican get elected than a Democrat. And that's absolutely true. That's something we've been saying from the beginning at Draft Bernie. And part of the reason for that is that, well, it's because they're as Chomsky says, they're basically both subsidiaries of the same party. This is really, Chomsky describes it as a one-party state, and I completely agree with him. Gore Vidal, many others agree with that assessment. Gore Vidal had, I think, the best way to put it. He said the U.S. is a one-party state. It's the property party, and it has two right wings, the Democrats and Republicans.
So I want to say something real quick, while I've got you on here, and this is cathartic for me. So, back when Progressive Independent Party was just getting started, the DNC hadn't happened yet. I found Erikel found me. We talked through this thing, and we became partners before any of this started happening. And I fell in love with her message, with her idea, her concept of this umbrella, this large party coalition. And, as I've watched, I met you through that as well. You're one of your top dogs over there, Ida Martinak, came to me and said, I need you to meet with Nick. I want you to meet with Nick. And so this whole coalition, you all, their efforts, etc., there is so much power here. So much. You've got women-led movement there that are helping pull the people out. You've got a very inclusive network of people. You've got people such as yourself who understand how Washington works, who have been around power players and have seen the different levers of power that need to be pulled. And you also have a relationship with the most popular president, or candidate or politician ever, and Bernie Sanders. So I see nothing but an upside here. I literally see nothing but an upside. What will it take? I mean, seriously, I'm telling you right now, there's like some sort of a death grip that some of these folks have with the identity of being a Democrat. The vote blue no matter who mindset is so ingrained. It is so deeply held. And what I'm noticing still, and this was a blemish going back to the primaries with Bernie, he kept getting pounded over the head that a lot of the progressive movement looked very, very, very white. And it was like, we didn't have this larger inclusion. We didn't seem to, but yet here we are. We do have that larger inclusion out here within this coalition between Erikel's work at PIP, your work at Draft Bernie, and all the other folks that are working to help pull this together. I mean, this should be a magnet to people of all races and all genders and all folks that just want to see real, earnest progress for the 99%. What is holding those folks back? What do you think it is?
It's beautiful. And, we put together a diverse steering committee came together around Draft Bernie, when we were just kind of forming this and planning this out. And it happened effortlessly, It was just that people of all races, of all backgrounds could see the need for this, And so that was really, that was one of the things that told me really is that this has, great potential. To get to what you were saying before, I would say that, I know I'm friends with everybody back, in Bernie world, and people tell me, what you're doing is helping us, and so, even inside the party, there's a lot of people who talk about inside-outside approach, in terms of what I would say to people who still support reforming the Democratic Party. And until they tout the inside-outside approach until they're really confronted with the outside. We are a solid outside. We are telling the party in the strongest possible terms that if you do not reform, as we have no expectation that they will, then we're prepared to start our own party, to represent the majority on the issues, to represent the majority who want a new party. We're prepared to do that. And really, throughout history, that is what it has taken. That third parties have led progressive movements throughout history. They have been at the forefront. Going back to what we've talked about before, the history of the Republican Party coming out and replacing the Whigs and leading the charge on abolitionism. That was something that came out of the Republican Party. It came out of the Free Soil, the Liberty Party, smaller third parties back in the 1850s. It was the same, fast forward to the turn of the century, 50 years forward. It was the same story. It was the Progressive Party, the Bull Moose Party, the People's Party, the Socialist Party. These were the parties that led the way on things like Social Security, unemployment insurance, child labor laws, creating the FDA, so we've got food and safety standards, making it so that not necessarily there was approval for drugs. Nobody could take to the street and market anything, as a panacea, as people did before then. So all of these things, 8-hour work week, I could go on. All of those things were really given to us by progressive third parties, not by the major parties. They worked. They achieved what they set out to, progressive third parties, either by forcing the major parties to adopt those issues into their platform or by replacing them outright, like Lincoln did with the Republicans. And so when you look at our movement today and you're thinking, well, gee, why the hell is it we're the majority here? Why the heck is it that the Democratic Party really feels no need to cater to us? And part of that is because we don't have the leverage that progressive movements have had in the past. So that major third parties that have said reform or else, we're saying reform, and then we're missing, we don't have an or else, reform, you better do it, but we don't really have anything, we don't have anywhere else to go if you don't do it. So it's only by giving voters somewhere else to go, and when major progressive third parties have threatened the major party, that really change has happened in our history, and all those policies that I listed have been adopted. All of that progress, all the things that we cherish in our society and take for granted now. So our movement lacks that leverage that a major third party gives it. And there's no one better than Bernie Sanders to really do that today, to create that today. And so part of what we're telling Bernie is, Bernie, asking nicely, we've tried that. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. The interests are too entrenched. The worldview of the people in that world, in establishment democratic circles, is too warped around corporations. I mean, having the same mentality as Wall Street CEOs, because many times they are. And so really, we're telling him the best way is not to ask nicely. That has not worked. It's a spectacular failure. It produces what we see now. It's to rather approach with leverage, with major leverage. So whether you want to reform the Democratic Party, whether you want to force it to adopt these platform issues, or whether you want a major third party that is really going to replace the Democratic Party, as I believe this would if Bernie Sanders started it, in quick order, the best way to do it is to create and empower a progressive third party.
Well, I want to say something that, for those people out there, and I see people throwing up, nonsense, and that's okay. That's their right to do so. I challenge any one of them to, at any given time, step into the ring and talk economics with me, and we'll see if that cup they're holding holds any water in it, and it's looking rather not possible, by the way. Stephanie Kelton is one of the founding members of the Sanders Institute. Stephanie Kelton is Bernie's former economic advisor, top economic advisor, not one of the economic advisors, the top economic advisor. She was also the Senate Budget Committee's, Senate Democrats, lead economist as well. And now she is the lead economist at the Sanders Institute. By the way, that means that the Sanders Institute has really fully embraced modern monetary theory, which is, of course, my activism, my primary form of activism in my own life. So here we go. We've got Bernie Sanders, who my large attraction to that campaign to begin with was the fact that he was the only one that had somebody on his team that could actually pay for the programs he put forward. The Green Party, I love them. But they don't have that. They have a crazy thing with this AMI group. So their entire platform is dependent on doing 100 different things before they ever get to a Green New Deal. To me, we don't have time for that. My kids don't have time for that. None of us have time for that. If we have an environmental crisis, we need to do it today. Modern monetary theory is the solution for that. And that's why Bernie has embraced it. And that's why I feel so strongly about embracing it as well. Obviously, I push that. What do you think about the Sanders Institute, and how does that provide any help for Draft Bernie? Does that give any? Do you have any inroads there? I mean, obviously Nina Turner's there, Cornel West is there, Harry Belafonte is there, Danny Glover is there. I mean, you've got a very diverse group. Tulsi Gabbard is there, Bobby Rice and a few others. But I mean, let's talk. I mean, what's his name? Ben Jealous is even there. You've got a really, really nice lineup, and many of them, including Nina, are friendly to you. Talk to me about that. Is there any interplay there at all, or how do you see that working?
Yeah. So it's intended obviously as a think tank. I think there's about half of, if I had to venture a guess, about half of the people in that group want a new party. So it's a nice group that Jane has assembled. So yeah, I think there is. I think there is in terms of the individuals who are there, and in terms of bringing those folks together. And of course, it is a 501c3. So it is limited in terms of what it can do as far as endorsing something like a new party. It has to remain independent of partisan politics.
So do you think, in your mind, obviously you can't do partisan politics, but does that provide any additional incentive to come out of the party, given the fact that there are those people in there? Or do you think do you think it's a neutral? Is it just sort of like a wash?
No, I think it does. I think that, and I think this is kind of the stage that we're in, Steve. I have the privilege of, standing at Draft Bernie and being able to see all of the people who are interested.
Oh, hey, we froze there for a minute. Now we're back.
Oh, okay.
Keep going, sir. I'm sorry about that.
All right. I was going to say that the stage that we're in now is that the interest for a new party, and this goes for people around Bernie, this goes for surrogates, this goes for the country in general, this goes for progressives. It's a dam ready to break, Steve. It's ready to explode, because people are so fed up with the way that things work, and support for this has grown so high. That really we're in the stage. You were talking about, is the Sanders Institute, is it going to help? What role does it play? Well, we're in the stage where all of those people, and this is what I started off saying, is that I'm in a position where I see all of those people, all of these people who are interested, people over there, over here, and we're in the stage of consolidation where those people all need to start talking to each other, and they start playing, and we start coordinating as a group. And a lot of what I'm doing is in regards to that, is to advance that. And so that people say, oh, you think that too? Oh, you believe that too? Oh, great, let's get together, let's plan it together, And so that's really exciting work, in terms of bringing those people together. And a lot of people on that board, is people who are people who I think that applies to, I hope that Stephanie's one of them. Maybe you could probably tell me.
I hope so too. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I happen to know that Stephanie is somebody. Oops, there we went solo with that. I'm sorry, that was a fat finger on Grumbine's part. I happen to know that these folks are adamantly looking for anybody to understand that deficits really only matter in the fact that they're not big enough. That they understand that we can afford all the New Deal politics that Bernie put forward, all the New Deal politics that Jill Stein put forward today, and we can do so without trying to chase rich people around pulling dollars off of them. And that right there is the most important thing, because once you eliminate barriers to saving lives, instead, what's happened traditionally has been people throw these barriers. Oh, well, we want these great things, and it's like, but we got to do these 20 things before we can do that. Sorry, but this is what we want. Stephanie Kelton, beautiful woman that she is, smart genius, says, guys, stop the lies, stop the nonsense. That's not true. We can do it today. The right wing in this country has blasted your brains full of neoliberalism. Even though you say you're fighting neoliberalism, you're steeped in neoliberalism. So I think that she would go where there was viability. You got to understand, this is a very difficult thing for heterodox economists. They go out there and they speak truth. They're castigated and they're kicked to the curb like third-party folks. And when you speak truth to people that violates their precious held beliefs, then all of a sudden you're persona non grata. You see it all the time in our movement. You see people hair flip. Oh, I don't like him anymore. I don't like her anymore. I don't like his style. I don't like whatever. And all of a sudden, bam, they're castigated and thrown to the island. This is what I think people like Stephanie, who are one in a million. There's millions of economists out there, tons of them. But somehow or another, she's been able to get into a place of visibility. And as a heterodox economist that has that ability, she's got to be very, very careful. So it requires people like myself, Rohan Gray, and others on the ground to give the kind of ground cover and air cover that they need to be able to say things, speaking truth to power, instead of allowing these bad narratives that keep us all desperate to continue. So I think she would do it. She's not going to be the one spearheading that move, unfortunately. She can't. She's got too much at stake in terms of overthrowing the economic orthodoxy as well. So I wouldn't look for her to lead the charge out of the party. I'd look for her to follow the lead of Bernie or Nina or any of that gang, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that is part of the beauty of getting Bernie, is that Bernie, drafting Bernie is, a lot of people have said, well, why not draft Nina? Why not draft Tulsi? Why not draft, all these folks? It's because drafting Bernie is drafting all of them. When if you get Bernie, or even if you don't, if you get Bernie, then you get all of these folks are going to come with him. Then it's that is the surest way, obviously, to break the dam. But the dam is so weak at this point that I think even getting folks like Nina Turner, such a powerful moral compass in the movement, to come over. And others, to come over as well, like Danny DeVito, stand up, loud and proud. that I think that would also that would take it down, you know. And so I can't imagine anything more effective too than a party that actually stands on the principles of MMT in terms of advancing that. And like I said, regardless of whether the party overtook the Democrats or not, and I certainly believe it would, that would force it onto the national stage and onto the two parties' really perspectives and platforms, just like it has always worked in our history before, in terms of progressive third parties forcing issues that we now take for granted. It's really human rights, you know? And so the exact same thing would happen here.
Very good. I appreciate it. So, Nick, I want to give you the last word here, because I think that, you know, the last time we talked, it was like really, really gearing up for this town hall and, you know, coming up and so forth. Talk to us a little bit about what the summer for Draft Bernie looks like and what the town hall that you've invited Bernie to looks like as well.
Well, we're working on setting a date for the town hall, and we'll be announcing that soon, and so that will be exciting. And the summer is going to be a summer of, you know, really, I'll take a step back and say that the advantage of getting Bernie is that Bernie already he created that mass coalition of the left, effectively created a party, a progressive party already, you know? And so the challenge of building this, even without having Bernie yet, is doing effectively what Bernie would do if he was to come on board without having him yet. And so it is bringing together that disparate, really atomized, siloed left that you described earlier, Steve, you know, and bringing them together around the idea that we need a new strategy, you know, and that we can come together and it can represent all of the issues that we care about. It doesn't have to be this very destructive, corrosive dynamic of the past that says my issue is more important than your issue and your issue is more important than this. We can actually we can run on all of them at once, and we do best when we run on all of them at once, just like Bernie did. You know, we don't have that infight when we actually stand up for all the issues at the same time, like we did in Bernie's platform. So that's what the summer is going to be about. It's going to be about bringing together, you know, as many different people as we can, as many different groups, you know, and willing that group together, willing a coalition for a new party together is much more difficult without Bernie. You know, of course, like a lot of some of the left is very entrenched. It's very fractured. You know, historically, the left is very, very fractured. And so it's difficult. But I'm optimistic, actually, that is something that is beginning to happen. Because I think that, you know, the left and those of us who want a major new party are beginning to recognize the urgency is beginning to kind of it's becoming more important than our preconceptions or than our labels, you know, or our brands that we have. The urgency of really coming together and building something. So that is what we'll be doing. Of course, what we'll be doing as well, and a big part of getting Bernie to come to the town hall, Steve, is our petition to Bernie at draftbernie.org. And I definitely encourage everyone to go sign the petition to Bernie. That is something which we will be presenting to him. We'll be printing those out and presenting to him later on. And so I definitely encourage everyone to do that because it's going to speak very highly to him, you know, and it's one of the things that he'll be looking at to see support for it, because he's going to be counting on all of us to get the new party on the ballot in the future and to volunteer for the candidates that will be supported by the new party. And so the petition is all part of doing that.
I'm sorry, I want to ask you one more thing, because somebody made a great case of, hey, can we address some of the concerns from the people in the audience? And I just want to say one, because for me, it's been frustrating watching people say things. I mean, I've done 3 or 4 solo streams myself where I have basically laid out the plan from an outsider's perspective. I'm already outside the Democratic Party, okay? Whether Bernie comes or not, I am already aiming for this People's Party. Come hell or high water, it doesn't make a bit of difference to me personally, if Bernie comes or goes. I want this party to work out for the people because the plan behind it, getting us all to work together in this fashion, is very, very exciting. We obviously want Bernie to come out because that brings a lot of other people with him and brings the entire revolution that he started right there together. Regardless of what anybody thinks about this, is irrelevant. But you're not centering this around one person because there's an entire coalition that Erica is working on, that other folks are working on. The idea here is that we as an independent movement, we as a people's party coming together are way bigger than one person. He has always said, not me, us. And you're doing that right now, yet people will still say it, and it drives me so crazy when people refuse to hear that no one's centering this around one person. You are asking Bernie to come out and take hold of the party that he started, this revolution that he started. And if he doesn't, you're going to do it anyway, with or without him. That's the point. And so it's like, why would somebody say you can't base it around one person when you're clearly saying that's not happening, but yet they still say it over and over and over again? It is infuriating for that level of thickness. I don't get it. I don't want to say they're a troll, but I do want to say that there is an obtuse nature there because we've clearly stated repeatedly, this is about us. This is a people's party. Now I'll let you take a crack at that because that drives me crazy.
This is not about making Bernie the autocrat or the king of a new party. This is really, in a way, about Bernie Sanders, about acknowledging that Bernie Sanders was an incredible leader during the primaries. And he called all of us to the campaign, and he proved by calling us to the campaign and by bringing the left together as he did already during the campaign, during the primaries, that the left is a system-changing force if we work together. He taught us that. And that's how, we tasted victory there, and we know that we can win. What this is about is instead now us, the people, calling Bernie over to join us. And that is something entirely different. We're saying, Bernie led us during the primaries, now it's our turn. It's our turn to lead you. It's our turn to show you where we need to go, where the country wants to go, what all of the statistics, what everybody says. People cannot wait for this. There is an urgency here, and we don't have time to dilly-dally anymore with strategies that are not working. We have got to really embrace the fact that we are the majority, and that if the Democratic Party is not going to be the vehicle, as it has so clearly demonstrated to us, then we need to be willing to take the lead ourselves in creating that. And Bernie Sanders said it was always about that. You're right. And so that's why, this is rather something empowering. This is us saying the people are setting their own, agenda, and they're deciding the direction of the progressive movement. It's not decided by one person, it's not decided by any small group. It's decided rather by the people who are welling together, coming together, calling for something different, and making it happen.
I want one final thing that I want to throw up there. Another thing that came up there was the idea that, hey, well, if it's not specifically about Bernie, then dump Bernie. And it's like, no, the idea here is pretend like the woke are in a bucket. We got a bucket full of woke people. And that bucket, I hate to break the news to people, is still not a real big bucket. It's not a big bucket of woke people. A lot of people are still searching. A lot of people are still in a twilight slumber. They're still wounded. They're still grieving from gaslighting. They still have a lot of damage that they're overcoming from not only the stolen primaries, but all the gaslighting from the MSM through the actual general election, and then continuing on. They're not sure what to do, and they're afraid. So for me, when I see this, I realize that there are people, period, and this goes back to your great article that you wrote that really kicked things off, that Bernie could be the next Abraham Lincoln. And that is that some people really need someone to lead them. It's not for all people. Many of us are self-starters, and we're coming together. We're self-organizing. We're building our own movement, if you will, on top of the concepts. But there are people that aren't like that. And in order to win elections, in order to make changes, you need people that aren't quite woke. So, and this, if nothing else, if these folks that are so woke that their eyes are glued open, if those people can't understand that we need more than just the critically woke to win anything other than maybe dog catcher of Facebook, okay? we've got to have a movement, and that requires those people that do have a bit of cult of personality in them. It requires everybody. It requires a lot more than just these outrageously woke individuals that eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff. Because quite frankly, you can look at surveys. You can look at the advertising dollars spent. People are glued to MSM still. People are still sitting there watching these commercials. People are still reading these nonsense stories. They still watch The View. They still listen to Joy Reid. They still listen to this garbage. And so we've got to penetrate them by hook or by crook, by any means necessary. And for those people that are just so woke they can't get this, you're destroying our movement. You are. You are literally destroying our movement by being too cool for school and not getting the fact that we can't win anything as a radical bunch of 1%. We got to be friggin' 51%. We got to be huge. We got to have a movement. Like, can you address that? If I'm wrong, correct me. If I'm right, affirm me, whatever.
Not everyone is on board and as aware of the strategy that we're talking about in terms of starting a new party. There's some echo, Steve. I wonder.
I think you're okay.
There we go. Okay. And so, yeah, not everyone is as aware, and not everyone has as much time, to devote to there's real life concerns, obviously, that everybody has to deal with, and it takes this is one of the flaws of our system. And one of the indications that the system really is not what a political system should be, is that you should not have to be a 24/7, political follower to really, to know how it works, basically, and to know, what has to be done or that kind of thing. But what I will say is, and what really impresses me, Steve, is the fact that even without a major party representing these views, representing representing single payer, representing free public college, representing getting money out of politics, representing reducing inequality, special prosecutors, just down the line, Bernie's issues, that without a movement, without a party on the national stage representing that in a huge way, still the vast majority of Americans have come to that conclusion that we need that. 60%, 70%, 80%, even 90% are on board with Bernie's issues, with the issues I just mentioned and more. And so really, it's the American people are smart enough, even without a major voice in politics, really emphasizing, without an electoral institution emphasizing, they're smart enough to know that that's in their best interest and that they want that. And so really what they're lacking is the institution that can finally move that over. One of the things that I see in the movement now, Steve, there's a lot of emphasis on education, on educating people on the issues, on, bringing them up to speed. We got to teach people, the perspectives of the issue. It's like, but really ask yourself, in what stage is this movement now? Is that what we need now? Certainly, it's always very important. But I would argue that we have really achieved the critical mass in education. And it is reflected in the polls that show 62% of people, want free public college. 60% of people, 2-to-1, want single payer. More than 90% want money out of politics. And so I would say that we have already, as Bernie Sanders himself put it at the People's Summit on stage, we have won the battle of ideas. We have won that. The country's with us. Now it's a question of how do we take those attitudes that the majority now hold, and translate them into power. How do we do that? That's the question. That's the stage that we're at now. Because you could have 100% of the country believing in all of those issues. And if you don't have a mechanism to power, if you don't have a way of actually taking office, if you don't have a way of legislating those things into being, then then really it's not worth anything then. You know, your platform and the amount of people who agree with that platform is only as good as your ability to translate it into actual, tangible electoral power. You know, and that's where we are today.
That's a great point, and I want to piggyback on that, because for everything that I say in my own world, when I'm doing my own activism and I'm doing my own live streams without the interview side, you know, I get all the people saying, that's great, Steve, but without election reform, we can't have anything. I had David Cobb on here talking about election reform the other day, talking about paper ballots, talking about revising, making a national holiday, doing all these things. But the reality is that we are trapped. If you don't believe in the election system, guess what? We still have this duopoly that is reigning supreme over that election process. It doesn't matter, no matter what, you're facing that. The only way that we get that electoral power back is to show them straight up numbers and put fear into them. And the only way to do that is to stop sitting there, well, you can't do this until you do that. And you can't do this until you do that. The bottom line is we have to do a bunch of things at once. But the most important thing we have to do is come together and show them power, show them strength in numbers, and show them resolve. You can talk till your cows come home about election reform, which is super important. And you can talk till the cows come home about leaving the Democratic Party. I'm right there with you. But the bottom line is that they need to see a unified front. And when you have people that are sitting there throwing eggs at people trying to do any means necessary to bring the people together, not in the Democratic Party, for God's sakes. We're talking about literally trying to make this thing happen. When you see the egg tossing, you got to have Nick and me back on here, right? So Nick, the broadcast cut me off in mid-rant. But anyway, bottom line is that we've got to be able to get enough power outside the system to be able to impact inside the system. Because you've seen in California, you saw all those progressives rallying, fighting tooth and nail, only to get tossed out because the structure of the Democratic Party, they've got so many layers of BS that blocks insurgencies. Right. It's ridiculous. So it doesn't matter whether the election system is broken or not. Our first phase is to show them power, show them resolve, and show them unity. That's my belief. What do you think, Nick?
I think you're right. Yeah, and I think the best way to do that is to do it in an electoral institution, like we talked about. That is really the stage that we're at. That's the point that we're at. Now that we've got the country on our side, the question is, how are we going to turn that into legislation? How are we going to turn that into winning seats? You know, and that's where we are now. So I agree with you. You know, I agree with what you said about California too. You know, California was really hailed as the shining beacon of Dementer, of reforming the Democratic Party. You know, Bernie Sanders hailed it. A lot of people hailed it. They said, look at what Bernie Kratz are doing in California. And then, of course, you know, by the very design of the California Democratic Party, it prevents the election of a progressive chair. You know, and so you had someone elected who's basically a mobster in that party and a pharmaceutical lobbyist as chair. You know, 2/3 of the California State Central Committee are superdelegates. So they're party officials and they're appointees and party bureaucrats. So good luck. You know, once again, the party is structured in a way that doesn't permit it. You know, like you mentioned before too, you had California has a Democratic supermajority in the state assembly, and it has a Democratic governor. It has a trifecta. They have complete control of the state's apparatus, the state's governing apparatus. So it was the Democratic governor, Jerry Brown, and then it was their assembly speaker who were the ones who shot down single payer this past Friday. It wasn't Republicans. Meanwhile, the Democrats are going wild about how Republicans are denying Americans health care coverage, on the national level. And they're right. They're right. But the Democrats don't need Republicans' help to do that. They can do it themselves, and they are doing it themselves. As the California nurses pointed out, as NNU pointed out, it's that the Democrats are the ones who denied Americans single payer, who denied Americans, Californians, really affordable coverage over there. And that you just see that time and time again. It's the same dynamic in New York. It's the Democrats again. They control the state, but the Democrats are so corrupt over there that they act like the Republicans. And so, what is the purpose of empowering this party that even when they do take power, they legislate just like the Republicans, or they legislate in a way that also opposes the progressive issues that the majority believe in. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
All right, fantastic. Look, Nick, I want to thank you for your time. We went a little over. I think it's nice to interact with the audience some, and I think in particular this because, honestly, I have my own reason for supporting this movement. Everybody will have their own reason for doing the things they're doing, but ultimately, there is an overarching reason we're all coming together. And, I think that it's important that people understand that you're really fighting for this, man. You're running around, you're doing everything you can. You've got one of the best teams I've ever met. I love working with the Draft Bernie team. They are committed, they're kind, they're good-hearted people, and they believe in what the mission is. And I really appreciate the way your team approaches things. I like the camaraderie, and I think that it really speaks well to the integrity of what you're trying to do. So I hope folks will think about it, will give a listen to you, maybe take some time to read the materials on draftbernie.org. Is it .org? Make sure. Okay, yeah. Draftbernie.org. And go to your Facebook page. You guys got great information out there. And maybe even sign up to give you all a hand because you guys always need volunteers and help as well. So final word, Nick. I'll give it to you, sir.
All right. Well, yeah, we don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to, we don't have to confine ourselves to a box. During the primaries, we had the world was our playground, and we were on top of the world. And we understood, that a party that takes corporate money cannot be a party for the people. We chastised Hillary when she took that Goldman Sachs money. We held her feet to the fire when she took $1 million checks from George Soros, And now, as always happens, when movements attempt to take over the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party starts to erase that knowledge and starts to try to convince us, no, we can be a big tent party, which means we can have the corporatists over here and we can get the progressive votes, but not the voices, over here. And so I would say that we just don't have to deal with that anymore. We have a better option. We are the majority now. The country's with us. The party institution is not, but we can build our own. And once you start seeing past the limitations, the tunnel vision of the party, then a whole new world of possibilities opens up in terms of what we can accomplish. It's no longer political possibility that constrains what we can do. It's rather technical possibility. What do we have the resources to do? What do we have the technology to do? What could we do? How we could provide for everybody on this planet food. There have been studies that talk about this. We could provide for everybody on this planet in terms of medicine in a tremendous way that we don't now. People millions of people die from preventable disease. In this country, it's a quarter of the country, a quarter of the children in this country go hungry. This is the richest country in the world. How can it be that we're poorer, effectively poorer than 40 years ago? Before we had invented the computer and the internet, the PC, before we had sent probes to Mars, before we built an international space station, sequenced the human genome. I mean, really, we are so much wealthier, and there is so much more possibility out there than the little box, the little narrow tunnel vision binoculars that the Democratic Party gives you, and that the establishment parties gives you. And so I ask that, you take those off and you see the possibilities for what we can do and for what we could achieve. We are the majority now. We just need a way to take power. We need a way to really implement everything that it is that we believe in. And so I ask that you come check out the team that we have, the proposal that we have, and come join us too. It's an amazing team. You can sign up to volunteer. You can sign our petition to Bernie. You can check it out on dropbernie.org.
Great. Nick, thank you very much for this. I really appreciate the time. It's always nice to talk to you. I really, really, really admire what you're doing, and I appreciate you very, very much. So, folks, thank you very much for joining us. I just want to go ahead and thank you all once again for supporting Real Progressives, and keep fighting, stay strong, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Got it.